Unfortunately, for a lot of the people, especially in Western North Carolina, where they rarely ever deal with hurricane damage or hurricane winds or flooding of this magnitude, for a lot of them, for the majority of them, they didn't have flood insurance, right? And so they're not going to be able to look to that to kind of come in and help offer some relief in this, and which makes this all the more devastating for them. And so again, like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about what the difference is between that, so that if you, God forbid, are ever in a situation where you are impacted by a flood with a home that you own, that you're not blindsided by what all is protected or what all is covered through the insurance that you have. So Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into a reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offering expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, I really wanted to kind of navigate away from some of the traditional topics I talk about and focus more on what is all present on all of our minds at this moment right now, which is the devastation that's taking place as a result of Hurricane Helene as well as Hurricane Milton, which also touched down this week as well. It's something that has caused just catastrophic damage in Western North Carolina and other states in the South as well. Florida's dealing with their damage that's coming through after dealing with Helene last week as well. And so I wanted to take some time to talk not only about the impact and kind of ways that we can help, but also go a little bit more into a topic that is not very well known in the real estate community, and that is the topic of flood insurance. What it is, what it covers, is it something that's necessary in all cases, or is it something that people are required to get? How do you get it, and what to keep in mind when you're kind of going through that process? I really wanted to take some time to kind of go into that. I actually went to a conference or an event maybe a couple years ago, going more into detail about flood insurance and about what it all means and what it covers and everything like that. And it was very informative. Like I said, in this industry, you're constantly learning new things and getting more insight into how it all works. And so I wanted to take some time to kind of explain how flood insurance comes into the picture, and why it might not always be something that can come in and save the day in many cases or situations. And so first and foremost, just explaining just how home insurance factors in and what the difference is between that. Whether you realize it or not, home insurance, or homeowners insurance, sometimes called, is actually completely different from flood insurance. They cover separate things. The things that are covered through flood insurance are not covered under homeowners insurance, and vice versa. And that's something that a lot of people don't even realize. Unfortunately, for a lot of the people, especially in Western North Carolina, where they rarely ever deal with hurricane damage or hurricane winds or flooding of this magnitude, for a lot of them, for the majority of them, they didn't have flood insurance, right? And so they're not going to be able to look to that to kind of come in and help offer some relief in this, and which makes this all the more devastating for them. And so again, like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about what the difference is between that, so that if you, God forbid, are ever in a situation where you are impacted by a flood with a home that you own, that you're not blindsided by what all is protected or what all is covered through the insurance that you have. So homeowners insurance covers like the house and everything like that. And so if you have damage sustained as a result of, let's say, maybe winds or a fire or something like that, a lot of the natural disasters, hailstorms, all those different things are covered if there's home insurance. So like I said, if winds come as a result of a hurricane and it knocks a tree over and it hits your house and knocks out your roof and takes everything out, that's homeowners insurance that is going to cover that. If you have a fire that takes place in the home and stuff, and or like maybe the house gets struck by lightning or something like that, with any of those events that are taking place that cause damage to the home, your homeowner's insurance more times than not is going to be the thing that covers that. Where it gets a little tricky is when you have waters coming in from the outside of the home into the home and causing damage as a result of flooding. So this could be torrential rains, it could be flash flooding, it could be things that come from a result of a hurricane. All of those things, any damage caused through flooding of that is not covered through your homeowner's insurance, which is what most people typically have. So it's very important that you understand that. Now, whether or not people get the policies, it all depends. Now, as far as homeowners insurance is concerned, more times than not, if you have a mortgage on your home, the lender technically owns that property, right? You are the homeowner for all intents and purposes, but if you owe any amount of money or they have a lien on that property, the bank is the one that actually has an interest in that property, right? They're the ones who technically own it because you're making payments to them to kind of make that. And so because it is their investment and they have the ability to foreclose on you if you don't follow through with that plan, they want to make sure that their asset is protected while you own that home. And so if you have a mortgage, you don't have a choice as far as homeowners insurance is concerned. You have to get it. They're going to require you to get that because, again, if that house burns down or if a tree comes and knocks down half of the home, that's technically their asset that just got destroyed. And they want to make sure that they have something in place to protect them, that they can recoup the funds that they need. And so they're going to require you to get a homeowner's insurance policy. You don't have a choice if you have a mortgage. That's what they're going to do, and that's what they're going to do. And they're also going to make sure that they put a policy that oftentimes is going to be included in your monthly mortgage payment, right? They don't want any problems or issues to come up when it's time to pay that premium every year. They want to make sure that those funds are available, and so they're going to make it a part of your monthly mortgage payment so that a portion of that goes into an escrow account that can pay that bill every single month. They don't want to make sure that insurance, or they want to make sure that the insurance never lapses, right? So they're going to require you to get that insurance in place. Where flood insurance comes into play, it's always, in most cases, it's going to be optional. When it is not optional is when you are in what's considered a flood-prone area or flood hazard area or flood zone. They usually will do maps periodically every few years or so where they will look at a map and look at the way that the elevation is. They'll look at the surrounding conditions. They'll look at the permeability of the ground, like how many buildings are around, like where's this water all funneling to, what areas are positions, or how is the housing situated. They're looking at all these different factors and determining which places are most prone to flooding. And if you are in what they consider a flood zone or a flood hazard area, then the mortgage lender is going to require you to also get flood insurance because, again, it's their investment, their asset. They want to make sure it's protected. And they know that homeowners insurance does not cover flooding. And so they want to make sure that you also, in addition to having that homeowners, you also have a flood insurance program as well. And that's usually offered, or most people usually get it through the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. That's who they're usually going to get those funds through. They're not required to. They can also go through other private companies as well to kind of get coverage, but more times than not, that's usually who they're going to go through to get that flood insurance coverage. Now, as far as finding out whether or not you are in that flood prone area or in that flood hazard area, there are maps that you can check out online. I'll put a link to that in there. It depends on what state or what area you're in, but you can go online to see if your house or if the house that you're interested in is in that particular area, because that's also obviously going to impact your monthly payments and everything if you have a mortgage on that home. Also, they have some sites. Now, it depends on the county that you're in. If it's a larger county, they likely have more resources, which means they have nicer tools and things that you can use to figure out if you're in an area. I live in Wake County in North Carolina. They have an awesome tax site that has a map which you can actually go to look and see in real time what easements, what things are in certain areas. You can look and see if it's in a flood zone area. You can see all of that on the maps. It's a really helpful tool. Not all the counties offer that, but at a bare minimum, you can at least go to all of the sites as well to see if your home or if your address is in one of those flood prone areas that's going to require you to have that flood insurance if you have a mortgage. So that's kind of breaking down the first two things on there. Now, flood insurance, the cost of it, even though it only specifically causes or covers damage caused by flooding, it's often going to be an equal, if not a little bit more, than in a homeowner's insurance policy, which covers significant more events and stuff like that too. So it can definitely hit the pockets pretty hard or whatever every single year that policy has to be paid. And there's also, if you get it through the National Flood Insurance Program, they have limits usually on how much is covered, right? It will cover the actual unit of the building itself, but it will also cover some of your possessions, but there is a limit to it, right? So I think for now, I want to say the last time I checked it, the limits were around like $250,000 for the actual building itself. Especially in today's market and world where the cost of things has gone up so high and inflation is skyrocketed, that likely isn't going to cover it. But there are other private companies out there that offer policies which can give you greater coverage. And as with any insurance product, the amount or the cost of it is going to vary based on what all you're trying to have covered. And it's also going to be based on the deductible that is in place as well. That's going to play a huge factor into just how expensive it can be. But it is something that does have limitations depending on the type of policy you get. So you also want to make sure that if you're going to get this, that it is enough to cover a total loss, right? If your house just got completely swept away by a flood or completely destroyed or is uninhabitable, you want to have something that has the capability to be able to rebuild that house as is in that area, assuming you still want to be in that situation, right? And so that is how the coverage of those things typically works. And again, it's only in place for people who have signed up for that flood zone area. Now, if you are not in a flood hazard area or a flood prone area, then most banks or lenders are not going to require you to have that flood insurance in place. You're still more than welcome to get it. If it's through the National Flood Insurance Program, they usually will have certain stipulations, like they'll make sure that whatever area community you're living in is still following proper protocols to make sure that they avoid flooding. So it's not just you can put it on any property out there and just expect that you're going to be covered. They still have some regulations that they're going to make sure that those local municipalities or those local areas are covering or they're putting in place to avoid flooding. But again, you can get it even if you aren't in a flood hazard area or a flood prone area. I heard one time years ago, the best way that I've heard it described is that everybody, and I'm going to say it again, everybody is in a flood zone, right? So you might hear people say like, oh, I don't live in a flood zone, I don't need to get flood insurance or whatever. We are all technically in a flood prone area, right? It's just a matter of how likely it is to happen. If it's a high likelihood, then that's what triggers the whole hazard and forcing you to get that protection if you have a mortgage. But if you are not in one, that's just saying it's not likely to happen, but it very well could. And what is happening in Western North Carolina is a perfect example of that. Right. Like I said, these are what's happening in Tampa with Hurricane Milton. These are 100-year floods. These are floods that don't come around often. Right. These are situations that don't happen often. And it's not to say that like, oh, there was never any chance of these homes being able to flood. Every single home that you see is technically in a flood zone area. It's just a matter of what the probability is of it flooding. And so if you want to make sure that you're protected in case that 100-year flood or that 100-year event does happen to come your way, flood insurance is a great way to make sure that you have additional protection in place. And it's also going to be able to change and make sure that you have a little more peace of mind. Obviously, if you lose everything in the midst of a flood, it's not like a simple snap of your fingers and everything's going to be brought back to the way that it was, but that will help eliminate a great deal of stress in the midst of a terrible tragedy and a terrible ordeal that you're trying to sift through and change up. And so a lot of times people will look at the situations out there and they'll think, oh, well, why didn't they have coverage in place, or why didn't they have it? Those floods were not anything common in those mountains or whatever. That was not anything that they had typically dealt with or typically gone through. And so, again, because it wasn't a requirement and it wasn't something that often happened, a lot of people out there are truly in a predicament because they do not have that flood insurance in place, and homeowners insurance is not going to help them with this type of event or this type of damage, right? Now, the deductibles, Again, they're usually on track with what you would see with a typical homeowners insurance policy. It always varies. It can be maybe 1,000 or it could be up to 10,000 in some cases too, whatever. It just depends again on how much coverage you have and what you want that premium to look like. The higher that premium is going to be, the lower the deductible, and you can decide, like I said, what makes most sense for you. But that's just things that you want to keep in mind to make sure that you are protected and that you are covered. But if you don't take anything else away from this episode, I want you to understand that homeowners insurance is not the same as flood insurance, and that if your home floods and you don't have that separate policy in place, homeowners insurance is not going to help you in that situation, right? And so that's where you need to make sure that you have those plans in place and that you can decide what works best for you, or how to make sure that you can avoid being in that particular situation. So now that we've talked about that, I did want to make sure that I also took some time to talk about ways that we can help the people who have been impacted by these hurricanes. There's all kinds of different relief efforts that have been launched and helped. It's been amazing to see just the way that people have been willing to drop everything and give. I always talk about, and I was telling a friend the other day, the natural disasters, they don't discriminate, right? They don't pick and choose certain areas to go to. They just hit. And then we're left to deal with the carnage and the damage and everything else that's happening. But it's not like a storm comes into town and says, hey, I'm just going to hit this section or this area that's Republicans, or I'm going to hit this area that's Democrats, or hey, I'm going to go over here. This is where the Christians are. I'm going to go over here where the Muslims are. Natural disasters do not care. They just attack. And in one of the more divisive times in our lives, like when we're going through presidential elections and all these other areas, and you got people fighting back and forth and arguing about what should be done, and there's just so much divisiveness going on, one of the only shining lights of these types of events is that it is one of the few things that can actually bring us together as a people. And so it's been awesome to see just how people have stepped up to the plate without even asking, right? It's not let me see what these people believe before I lend a helping hand. No, there's been none of that. People have jumped in immediately and done anything they can to help. They've offered food, blankets, clothing, and it doesn't we can't allow it to just stop now. It has to continue because this is going to be something that is going to take them years to get back. And even then, it's still not likely going to be ever to the point where it's like, oh, we're now back to where we were before. When Hurricane Katrina hit in New Orleans, I went down a couple times to help when I was in college to help with the relief efforts out there. And it was maybe 2-3 years after the storm had officially touched down, and just the damage that was still present in some of the hardest hit areas down in the Ninth Ward and everything. It was still evident just how much damage was done and how long it was going to take them to get back to a place where things were normal, right? We were out there working for weeks, and we were still only able to do a fraction of the work that needed to be done on just one house, right? And so you can imagine entire communities having to band together and rebuild. This is going to be an ongoing effort and something that is going to take years for them to be able to dig out of. And so we really need the help. And in addition to the food and the clothes and the diapers and the formula and jackets and clothes, as this weather's starting to drop, in addition to that, one of the most helpful ways is sending money. That is going to be the way that is really going to be most impactful, again, because like I just said, with especially with not a lot of those homeowners having flood insurance and things in place, money is going to be one of the best ways to kind of help them dig themselves out of this hole, right? And so we need to band together, make sure that we're doing all that we can. And so I know a lot of people are skeptical about giving certain organizations because, unfortunately, during these times, we also have a lot of people who try to take advantage and scam the situation and stuff like that, too. And so I just wanted to give a couple of options that are out there that are reputable organizations that I would give my money to, have given my money to, and would encourage you to support as well, as just one of many options that are out there. One of which is the NC Realtors, we have a relief foundation, and we've had this available for years to help with different things that have happened across the decades and stuff like that. Anytime natural disasters have happened, but they have a realtor relief fund where the proceeds go directly to helping out those individuals. And so I'm gonna put information about that in the description for this episode, but you can also text Helene Relief, HELENE, Relief 24 to number 71777. Again, Helene Relief 24 to 71777. Or you can visit their website at rrf.realtor. That is one way that you can go and donate and offer things that can help out with this disaster relief as we're scrambling to figure out ways to help. I'm sure there are going to be other options that are out there as we circumvent or kind of discover the damage that was caused by Milton. There'll be additional ways that we can help out as Give as well. That's just one way that's out there. Also, the Realtor Giving Network. That's our nonprofit leg of our local association here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and they have also put together efforts as well to be able to help. And so those are just a couple of options that are trustworthy, reputable organizations who are doing the work and giving the money directly to these people to make sure that we have the greatest impact. As I come across any other options out there that are good ones, I'll be happy to recommend them as well. But we have to find a way to be able to give back and help out just because we don't know what all the needs are going to be at this moment. And I'm sure there are going to be things that we continue to find out as time goes on. But anything that you can provide to help will be helpful. And let's make sure that we can pull our neighbors out of this situation, out of this turmoil. So hopefully this episode was helpful for you, informative in understanding how to protect yourself. But then also making sure that we do the work to make sure we're helping our fellow neighbors as well. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. I'll talk to you next time.